is released, and that needs to be removed from your blood because it's quite acidic, and you don't want acid in your blood, so your body's going to take that right out. To do that, you need to increase your circulation so the blood gets to your heart, and then it goes to your lungs, and the CO2 can be breathed out, and that blood can be reoxygenated. And that kind of requires that your circulatory system works really efficiently. And as I said before, that efficiency will carry on into your day-to-day life. And again, as I said before, high-impact activities like jumping and running put stress on the bones, and they adapt to this high-impact activity by becoming stronger. Resistance training is the second major category of exercise, and resistance training is any exercise in which you exert your muscles against an outside force. And that can be weightlifting, using resistance bands, or doing body weight exercises. When you perform resistance training, your muscles catabolize, which means that they get tiny little tears in them. After exercise, your muscle repairs, obviously, and that's called anabolism. That causes the body changes you associate with resistance training because your body makes those little tears and then it fills them back in, causing the raise in volume of your muscles. Resistance training can be done towards different goals. The main ones are strength, which is the increased ability of a muscle to contract against a load; endurance, which is the increased ability of a muscle to contract for a length of time; power is the increased ability of a muscle to contract with a significant amount of force in a small amount of time. Strength training, you do like 8 to 12 repetitions with a weight that makes you feel fatigued after those reps, and you do like 3 sets of that. Endurance, you would do a lot of repetitions, like more than 15, with a weight that makes you feel tired after that, and you do probably 3 sets of that too. And then power, you would use as heavy of a weight as you can and do 3 to 8 really fast reps. Kind of think about Olympic weightlifting when they get a really heavy weight and then just do 1 or 2 reps with it. Outside of increased cardiovascular endurance and muscular ability, there's different skill and health-related components of fitness. Skill-related components of fitness are balance, hand-eye coordination, power, reaction time, agility, and speed. And these are the kinds of things you learn from playing a sport. Like if you're playing soccer, you would need that reaction time, the agility, and the speed, and hand-eye coordination too. If you're a gymnast, you would need power, and balance, and reaction time, and agility, that kind of thing. The health-related components of fitness are flexibility, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, and body composition. And those are the kinds of things you develop through regular exercise. Of course, not all exercise is created equal. They have different intensities. And intensity just measures how hard you're working, or how hard your body is working. And to measure this, you can use your heart rate. So the standard formula is 220 minus your age is your approximate maximum heart rate. So I'm 16, so 220 minus 16 is 204. So 204 beats per minute is my maximum heart rate, and I really should never go above that, or even probably close to it. Moderate intensity would be 50 to 60% of your maximum. So 50% of 204 is 102, so that's about my moderate intensity heart rate. After about 10 minutes of this kind of activity, you start to get sweaty. So that's kind of a way to know without taking your heart rate and doing all the stuff. CDC, that's the American Center for Disease Control, recommends about 150 minutes a week or 30 minutes a day of this kind of activity. And that could be brisk walking, swimming laps, or lightweight training. Vigorous intensity is the other intensity. That's about 75 to 85% of your maximum heart rate, and you'd get sweaty after just a few minutes of this. And the CDC would recommend 75 minutes a week or 30 minutes every other day of this kind of activity. This is kind of like an either or a mix it up throughout the week kind of thing between moderate and vigorous intensity. They're not saying you should do 100 minutes of moderate and 100 minutes of 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. Of course, there is such thing as going overboard. Overexerting yourself would be anything above that 85% of your maximum heart rate. You really couldn't sustain this for more than a few minutes, and you'd start to feel lightheaded or sick. You don't want to do this. It's not good for you. You'll feel really not good. It's too much strain on your body to do this kind of activity. If you're an athlete, this might be like your all-out game day performance. If you're a sprinter, you might go for the gold at 90% of your maximum heart rate, just going for it for like 10 seconds and then you're done. But you really shouldn't train at this intensity. It's like your performance day. Rest is very, very important between workouts and between parts of workouts, as it keeps you from overexerting yourself. So if you're doing some vigorous intensity movement and you start to feel lightheaded, be sure to take a break. If you're weightlifting and you really just cannot go any further, take a break. That minimizes your risk of injury because you're not overexerting yourself. Your muscles still have something to go off of. And that is the same thing for your heart, because your heart is a muscle. It needs time to repair after exertion. So you might be asking, how should I even get started? This sounds kind of complicated. It's really not that complicated. Find ways to incorporate activity in your daily life, like standing when you're on the bus, walking to places instead of driving, or just walking up and down the stairs in your house a couple times. Another thing you can do that kind of fits hand in hand with that is you can break up your activity into short pieces. The CDC recommends at least 10-minute long blocks of exercise to get the benefits like increased muscular strength, cardiovascular endurance, and 10 minutes is really not a long time. You can just do 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day, and there you are, you're 30 minutes a day. If you're starting to really get into a fitness journey, that kind of thing, you should probably do a benchmark test and set reasonable goals based off of that. And a benchmark test could be like running a mile, seeing what your time is, how many push-ups you can do, how many sit-ups you can do. Just kind of test where you are and then set reasonable goals. And those goals could be like lifting a certain amount of weight, like I want to be able to squat 75 pounds in a month. Running a specific distance or a specific distance in an amount of time, like I want to run 3 miles or I want to run a 5K in half an hour. Your goal could even just be to work out a certain number of days per week. Like I want to work out 3 or 4 days a week. Perfect. The biggest tip is probably to just find movement that you enjoy doing. Your exercise shouldn't feel like a punishment. It should make you feel good. You could do like dancing, or you could do swimming, walking, running, anything that you enjoy that raises your heart rate and gets you a little sweaty. To progress in your fitness program, progressive overload is so important. And progressive overload is incrementally increasing the intensity of your exercise. Ways to increase that intensity are increasing the amount of weight that you're using if you're doing weightlifting, increasing the time under tension. So like if you're doing squats, you might want to hold it at the bottom for a couple of seconds before you come up to increase your time under tension. Changing the tempo of a movement. So if you're doing deadlifts and you're just kind of doing a 2-2, 1-2 down, 1-2 up, you could do 1-2 3 down, 1 up, and like really focus on the contraction in that short amount of time, kind of increasing the power of a movement. And the last way is to increase your range of motion. So that could be like going down farther in that squat or in that lunge, doing a more full bicep curl, bringing the hand right up to your shoulder and then back down to an almost straight position. And the best tip, really, although it's not realistic for everyone, is to work with a coach. A coach will tell you what exercise might be best for you. They'll make sure you have good form, which is super important, and just keep an eye on you. That kind of goes hand in hand with common injuries. So, of course, when we move around, we're likely to get injured if we're doing it incorrectly in some way. And those incorrectnesses could be working with improper form, or training too intensely, or just not varying our training plan at all. But common injuries. Stress fractures are small fractures in your bones, typically in your lower leg, like in shin splints. And those are a result of repetitive force. So like if you're running a lot, you might get shin splints because your foot is hitting the ground in the same way and that is a lot of pressure on the front of your calf, or the front of your shin, which will result in shin splints. Strains and sprains are the result of stretching or tearing ligaments and tendons, respectively, or even muscles. And these can be minor or very serious. In minor cases, you could probably just rest them and, just take it easy for a minute, do some massage or whatever. And in serious cases, you should see a doctor. If it hurts too much to walk on, you should see a doctor. And cramps are very interesting as well. They're not really injuries, but they're very painful and the result of muscular fatigue and electrolyte imbalance. I say that they're the result of muscular fatigue and electrolyte imbalance because that's the thing that makes the most sense to me based on my research, but it's not completely known how they're caused. So, ways to avoid these kinds of injuries: warming up and cooling down properly. Your body can't just go right into lifting heavy weights. It needs to ease into it. So, walking before you go on a run, doing movements with lighter weights and working up to higher resistance throughout a workout, those are ways to warm up. And then stretching is a great way to cool down, and massage. I really like that way to cool down too. Just kind of like massaging your own muscles. And then proper nutrition is also really important. You want to make sure you're eating enough carbs and protein and fat, like enough throughout the day, and water is really important too. So if you want more information on nutrition, I would recommend our What Are Macronutrients article. It's on our blog, and I'll link it in the show notes. As we discussed before, rest is really important so your muscles have a chance to recoup after exertion. And incorporating stability work like Pilates or yoga is really important too, so you don't, so you can strengthen all of the little muscles around your bigger muscles, and they have support as well. And the last and possibly most important and effective way to decrease your chance of injury is to have a dynamic and diverse training plan. So if you're a runner, maybe you run 5 days a week, and then one of those runs is easier, and then after that you can do some weightlifting or some yoga or something like that, and then on one of your rest days you might also do some, like a leg training day, an arm training day, core, and then of course you have a rest day on the last day. We don't want to do the same action over and over again, because then those muscles that do that action will become overused, and the other ones who don't do that action will become weak and atrophied, so they won't be able to support our other muscles, resulting in injury. And the last thing I want to talk about today is, what is the deal with protein? I always see those guys in the weightlifting on the internet talking about protein. What does it even mean? Why do we need to eat it? Why is it so important? Okay, so protein is a macronutrient. It's a chain of amino acids folded up in a specific way. And it is broken down by the body back into those amino acids, which are then turned back into proteins inside of your body. So your cells don't actually use the whole protein that you ingest, but the amino acids to create their own proteins. In the anabolic period, like we talked about, anabolism and catabolism, I think that's how you say those words. Not completely sure. But in that anabolic period, when your muscles are rebuilding, your body uses the proteins that you ingest, the amino acids that you ingest, folded into proteins inside of your body, to repair the muscles. So it is very important for muscular recovery and building up your muscles. And you should eat about 0.4 grams of protein per pound of body weight, including some within 2 hours after a vigorous workout. But as long as you're eating enough protein throughout the day, you should be fine. And then insulin is also necessary to let protein inside of your muscle cells, and the way that you get insulin is through eating carbs, because after you eat carbs, your body produces insulin to let the carbs into the cell. So you would need to eat some carbs with your protein at some point throughout the day to make sure the protein can get into your muscles. that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Again, I'm Ava Kerner. This is